Capitalism is not for black people. It was not designed for black people. Let me explain. In order to understand capitalism, we have to understand some very important historical context. And to ignore this context is very problematic. So let me provide some of the context that make up what we call and what we define as capitalism. It's not just about money and economics. I mean, that's an end result of it, but it's not fundamentally what it is. So capitalism, Western capitalism, is very specific. They have dropped the prefix to Western capitalism, which is racial capitalism, right? Racial capitalism is what capitalism is and what it was founded on. It was racial capitalism. It was racialized in the sense that the foundations of it had everything to do with, delineating or differentiating people on the basis of race. Because the fundamental principles of capitalism is to make as much money at as little to no cost. This is, in effect, the main driving force for capitalism. So that principle, that tenet, is fundamentally how the United States of America came to be. First and foremost, the United States is built on two pillars. Two pillars: genocide of the natives and the land grab that came as a result of that. The second pillar is the enslavement of the Africans and the black people and the darker people who were on this continent when they arrived here. Now, once we establish that, now we can introduce the term racial capitalism, right? Because the whole process of the whole rationale around and based on land theft and genocide was racialized. It was racialized in the sense that kingdoms and powerful people at the time rationalized the land theft and the genocide of the natives by declaring them non-human. Now, the second pillar, which was what? Enslavement. That pillar was also racialized. It was determined that black people were not human. They didn't have souls, just like the natives, right? Because they didn't have souls and because they weren't human, because they weren't Christian, right? Because you can't dispel the religious aspect of this. We're talking about Columbus and up through them. And these were crusaders. These were, Christian holy warriors. So this was justification for the enslavement of black people. So remember these two pillars. That's why they are fundamentally racialized. So when we think of Western capitalism, it has always been racial capitalism. It has always been that. And even till today, in the modern times, we still see the racialization, whether it's through the mineral extraction throughout and across Africa and the dehumanization of the Africans, the exploitation of their land for the gain and for the wealth and for the well-being of Western nations like the U.S. and across Europe.
Although one of the poorest countries on earth, DRC is rich in minerals. But a history of brutal colonial exploitation looks like being repeated now.
And this is why the United States was able to accumulate so much wealth, because it spent little money on the labor to build the country. The money that they spent went into transportation, went into insurance for enslaved people, went into transportation, modes of transportation to bring and transport slaves to different parts of the world, et cetera, et cetera. But the labor cost was absolutely zero. And when you have hundreds of years of this free labor, of course, you're going to accumulate massive amounts of wealth. We can't disentangle this history and this very important social context from what capitalism is and what it means to who we are as a society and as a nation and as groups of people and individuals. We can't disentangle that. No matter how uncomfortable it is, the facts are still the facts. We can choose to act as though, the trauma, the traumatic realities don't exist. We can choose that. People are choosing that left and right all around us, right? But the fact of the matter still remains. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the emergence of black communities, like how black communities were able to build communities and support its communities. Once the period of enslavement ended, the black Americans in the United States were the labor force for the country. So they were the skilled workers for the entire nation. So by the time, once the Great Migration is upon us. You have Black Americans who are migrating to Chicago and building cities like Bronzeville, migrating to Detroit and building, neighborhoods like Black Bottom. And then they're migrating to New York City and building, what became the Harlem Renaissance. All of this was during the era that the United States is known as the Great Depression.
Little man, what now? Well, you can always sell surplus apples 5 cents apiece on the street corner. Prosperity is just around the corner, say the hopeful headlines. But around the corners wind the lengthening bread lines, and a whole new class of citizens appears in American society, the new poor.
What was the ideology? What were the economic pillars that allowed Black Americans, to build these communities? Was it capitalism? Were they practicing a kind of capitalism? No, absolutely not. They were practicing something that was more social. It was more social, and I don't want to name it necessarily. I don't want to give it a name, but it wasn't capitalism, because capitalism is about the rugged individual. It's about individualism. Right? And so Black communities weren't doing that. They were looking out for each other. They were looking out for them, for their people, so that when people from the South came up to these places, the generations that had been there already were providing food and providing clothing for these people. They had things for them to do. They had things set up for them. They had money and stuff set aside for them. We've gotten so far away from that me saying that is controversial, even though we know that fundamentally capitalism has been to our demise. It has been the thing that enslaved us.
There was so much family lost. There was a lot of dynamics lost, a lot of lives lost, a lot of minds lost. We lost a lot in 40 years. And we're trying to get it all back by hustling and doing LLCs and being CEOs. That ain't how you're going to get it back. Because what you're doing is you go back and you're trying to exploit your community, because a lot of y'all do business like crack dealers. You look at your community as custos, as clientele. No, these are people. And these people work hard for their money. I understand inflation, but goddamn, a haircut ain't $100.
It's interesting because we've adopted these models today. We've adopted them, these individualistic models of the accumulation of wealth with no morals, with no integrity. So, we find our so-called superstars and the peoples that we look up to and we admire, we find them, they'll take any amount of money to do anything to promote liquor to our communities, to promote gambling within our communities, to promote companies and organizations, institutions, and people who are vulturistic in their dealings with our people. And we have our so-called celebrities who are joining forces with these people and with these individuals just solely for their own individualistic gain.
I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. Let me handle my business, damn.
How I deal with Black people, I just go back to slavery. If I see a nigga with $1 billion, guess what? I'm gonna be looking at him from the field like, I want to come in there with you. I want to put an outfit on.
With some clean water.
The privilege that they give Black people, that only Black people can flex on other Black people with, because that's all you can do, because you can't flex on the motherfucking master.
Someone could ask, I say, okay, well, how and why is the accumulation of wealth in and of itself a bad thing? I never said that. I'm not saying that. The accumulation of wealth is a bad thing in terms of what you do with it once you get it. Are you hoarding it, or are you using it to support your people and benefit your people and your communities, right? Because if you're doing that, if you're accumulating wealth and you're hiring people and you're supporting communities and you're helping to build communities and stabilize communities, this is no longer capitalism, right? The accumulation of wealth. All right, now, are you accumulating wealth to the demise and the detriment of people? Are you killing people in the process? It's another story. But there's so many layers to this conversation about the accumulation of wealth and what is done with that wealth, after it has become accumulated. These are components of an economic system that you have to make determinations about before you can label it, before you can label it socialism, or before you can label it capitalism. And we have to get away from this really elementary idea that socialism is fundamentally bad, right? And that capitalism is the only way to go. Like this is a Eurocentric idea that is fundamentally, connected and not at all disconnected from the genocide of the Native Americans and the land thefts, right? And the enslavement of African and Black people in the United States.
It was the economic structure of sharecropping that allowed near-slavery conditions to continue on plantations. Large numbers of African Americans left the South for factory jobs in the North, leaving behind the farms they had toiled on for generations.
I think moving forward, we are very well positioned, as Black people in America. We have a lot of annoying issues amongst ourselves that we really need to work out. And a lot of those issues that are annoying our progress are put into our communities and put into the heads of our people. The idea that Black women can go at it alone, or the idea that Black men don't need Black women. And this is very ahistorical. And we shouldn't have any problem, trying to heal ourselves from whatever the damages that we've done as a result of this. We should look at, who benefits from this, because certainly we don't. Black women don't. Black men don't. The collective of Black people don't at all. The Black students, the Black kids, the Black babies, the Black future don't benefit from this. This is fundamentally unbeneficial. So, but I think we are at a very, we're at a crossroads and a very important time in our history, in the sense that, the accumulation of wealth amongst Black people is probably the highest that has ever been for Black people in the United States. But it's more to it than just that. It's like the money means nothing if we can't translate it into social programs and into organizations, if we can't make that connection, right? The money means absolutely nothing. We're showing that. We're proving this to ourselves in real time. It is one of the biggest sort of missed opportunities that I could ever think of. And I think history will record it as one. But I think that we're in a position to where we can right the ship, and we almost have to, we absolutely have to, because in so many ways we are contributing to the genocide and the destruction of our communities and the destruction of our histories. We are contributing to it by not actively working to preserve our histories, and not actively working to reinvigorate our communities, by not actively working to rebuild our academic and educational institutions.
I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against Black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates Black people, but I know the textbooks I give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to.
So there's two, possible solutions here, right? That can be built upon and expanded. But one is for the long term and the other is for the short term. For the long term, we have to, really be arguing seriously about having educators, Black principals and Black teachers that are leading our schools and teaching our kids. We can't care who likes that, who don't like that. We can't care how they feel about that. We can't care about that. We can't care about white folks who don't like that idea because it will lead some of them, I will put some of them out of a job. We can't be, that can't be our problem. It can't be our problem, because we're losing our students, we're losing our people, we're our communities are suffering. And that should be our main priority, right? And until we do that in a real kind of way, I think we're fooling ourselves, and we're contributing to our own demise. So that's long term. I think some of the short term things is we can just look at the money that's available to us, that we have access to, whether it's the entertainers or whatever, or the professional class, the professional grade of us amongst us, right? There's a real possibility that we can change the economic course of our people almost immediately in many respects. Right. But we would have to have the kinds of organizations and institutions and the people who are trustworthy enough. You understand? And that's another issue. We have to be able to trust each other. And the fact that we don't trust each other to me, in my opinion, the direct result of the kind of COINTELPRO-like sort of disinformation and the infiltration of people who look like us and, in our midst. In the last, year or so, we've lost some giants. We lost H. Rap Brown recently. We lost Assata Shakur recently. Mumia Abu-Jamal is still incarcerated. We have so many other political prisoners from the Black Power and the Civil Rights Movement, right? who are, you know, are still alive and can tell us things, but many of them are aging and elderly and sickly. And so, like, we are the next generation, like our generation, Generation X, like the time is up. Like, it's your time. It's our time, you know, to take the mantle. We are the hip hop generation, and we know what hip hop was designed to do before the capitalists got on board and commandeered it and took it and reinvented it and made it into something else. So I'm talking specifically to that generation who know exactly what I'm talking about. It's on us. Peace, y'all.
Word up, quick to set it, don't wet it. Real niggas lick shots, peace, Connecticut.
Yo, what up, yo? Time is running out, it's for real, though. Let's connect, politics, ditto.